We made it! We did! Hello, everyone! Welcome to Bounty Hunt, the final episode of this season, a UTD Network podcast where we hunt down all the extra content in the Star Wars universe. I am your host, Eric Eilerson, and joining me for the final time for this show is the full crew, the full cast of characters on the Super Bowl Sunday, starting off with the beautifully face-lit Dr. Corey Helton.
Reporting for duty, sir.
Excellent!
I don't know why that's where I went, but that's all
I know,
right.
you ready for
Cheers.
Bad Batch, I guess.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the finale episode. This is going to be exciting to talk about. I can't believe how many shows we done now that are
This is number 50.
finales.
This is
of
the
shows.
well,
This is crazy.
yeah, I guess 4 finales, because this is our 50th
nuts.
episode of Bounty Hunt.
Wow, that's crazy.
50.
I know. What's even crazier than that is that Dr. Charles Hankels is still here.
I'm still here. If you're someone who watches this show, welcome to my face on a Sunday morning. You've never seen it before for this entire season. That was strategic, and I apologize.
Well, good. You got this glorious ring light. You got your coffee. You are finally maybe a tenth the glorious Adonis man that Wes Jenkins is.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, it is Super Bowl Sunday. I don't have a dog in the fight, but who cares? Everybody's going to watch football. Second rewatch of Bounty Hunt was done this morning, and I caught a couple things that I can't wait to talk about. So, Eric?
I'm excited to hear about it. Before we get into a recap, just a quick who day. Excellent. For those of you that know, you know. If this is your first episode of Bounty Hunt, what a choice. We are basically going to tell you everything that happened in the last episode of the Book of Boba Fett, Season 1, Episode 7, In the Name of Honor, the finale, as we said. Full spoilers on this show. After our recap, we're just going to talk about it. This episode, obviously, we'll talk about the season as a whole. We'll talk about this episode specifically, things we liked, things we didn't, and then we'll look back at the season of the Book of Boba Fett. What worked? What can we learn going forward? What are we excited for coming down the pipeline and that whole thing? But because we had a lot to talk about, we will say one more time, full spoilers for all of the first season of the Book of Boba Fett. You go forward at your own peril. All right. We begin the finale of Season 1 with Boba, Fennec, Din, and the mods examining the wreckage of the sanctuary that got blowed up. Unfortunately, there is no Garza, so it looks like she is in fact deceased. Din then comes in and says Cobb Vanth is planning to bring a garrison from Freetown if Boba eliminates the spice trade, and Boba agrees to do so. Cad Bane, come on, outline. Cad Bane then checks in with the Pyke leader, who admits the murder of the Tuskens earlier in the series. They framed the Nikto Speedbikers. Bane assumes Boba will find this out and seek vengeance later on. Back in Mos Eisley, we see Pelimato is visited by an X-Wing who is not the Space Cops, but in fact R2-D2, bringing Grogu back wearing Beskar chainmail. He has indeed made his choice. Back in Sanctuary, Boba has settled in while assigning his lieutenants to keep an eye on the surrounding territories, make sure they don't get snuck up on. However, he is then met in the street by Cad Bane, who offers the Pykes terms for his surrender. Boba refuses staunchly after Cad Bane gets in a few shots at his old foe. As the negotiation breaks down, the Tatooine families all betray Boba and begin attacking Kersantin, the Gamorreans, and the mods surrounding Mos Espa. Fights break out all over the city, and Fennec realizes what's happening and heads to Mos Eisley to confront the Pykes' leader. Other Pykes appear outside the sanctuary, and the Major Domo offers to negotiate with them for Boba. Boba obliges just long enough to spring a trap, with him and Din rocking out of the sanctuary on jetpacks to begin a Mandalorian assault on the Pykes. They are soon joined by the Freetown garrison, without Cobb Vanth, unfortunately, and a nearly indestructible Black Krrsantan, until a couple of massive droids descend upon them with ray shields. They try everything possible to defeat these droids to no avail. Eventually, Pelimoto arrives with Grogu in tow, and Din is reunited with his little son. The mods and the Freetonians keep trying to fight the giant droids, but nothing works until Boba leaves for a moment and returns with his own son, the Rancor that he is riding. The battle then continues with the Rancor riding Boba Fett eventually taking down the droids and killing a really ridiculous amount of soldiers until Cad Bane arrives and frightens the beast away with his flamethrower. Cad Bane and Boba Fett show down in the street, and though Cad Bane proves he is the faster draw, Boba uses his gaffy stick to take down Cad Bane and stab him in the chest, killing him once and for all after all their years of rivalry. Meanwhile, Boba's Rancor rains destruction down on the city until Grogu is able to calm him down with the Force and takes a nice little nap. The battle has been won. It's over. Back in Mos Eisley, Fennec arrives at the Pyke stronghold and brutally assassinates the entire leadership like an Assassin's Creed mission before joining back up with Boba, Chrysanthemum, and the mod to enjoy their newfound peace and power in the city. Din and Grogu then take off in Din's hot rod N1 starfighter, and the little guy pounds on the glass just enough to annoy Din into hitting his boosters one last time, and they are off to their next adventure. The credits roll in the finale, but of course, we gotta get a mid-credits scene, and we see Boba's bacta tank. It is in use, being used by none other than Cobb Vanth, as the modder gets his tools ready to work on his newest client. It is confirmed the Marshal of Freetown will return. And that's the book of Boba Fett. So, fellas, let's go around just this episode for now, not the season.
Mm-hmm.
As we do with all of them, a 1 to 10 ranking. Charles, start us off.
I enjoyed this episode. Definitely. It was great to get some payoff on some of the things that we've been wanting to see. The Rancor was one of the biggest highlights for me. Cad Bane, actually getting to see him in action was another thing, even though, RIP, he's gone. Overall, though, I still think this episode was kind of a downswing from some of the previous episodes, which is fine. I think I'd give this overall an 8.0.
Nice. Very nice way to end. Corey, how about you?
Yeah, I will echo some of that stuff. I think that I found, I think it's Robert Rodriguez. I think that's the thing I can say. Like, I'm not a big fan of the episodes that he produced this season, just in general. But they were a little weaker, and I'm kind of sad that he did the finale because, you sort of, I think, Eric, you said, I can't remember if it was on Living Force or if it was on this show a while back, you said something along the lines of like, whatever the last thing is you see, that's what sticks with you. Right. I do kind of feel kind of sad, not sad. That's not the right word. I have mixed feelings about the season as a whole because this is the finale. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
I think I would give this a little bit lower of a score. I would give it like a 6.5. Oof.
Oof. All right. Oh, man, the pain in your face as you said it. All right. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. I'm excited. Wes.
I originally was kind of on the lower end when I had first watched it. I rewatched it this morning and I liked it a little more because I was paying more attention to like some of the overhead shots to see exactly how big Mos Eisley and Mos Espa is. So I had some questions regarding why the Pykes were even there. But having like seen the battle that I was trying to take my head away of, this is the last episode. I just want to be in this episode. Sure. And I really enjoyed those Scorpion droids. Is that what we're going to call them? Is that what they're called?
Oh, there's a name, but that sounds great. I don't care what their actual name is.
Yeah, something like that. Fantastic addition. I loved that part. So I really liked the final battle scene, but I wish it would have lasted a little longer. So I'm going to give this episode an 8.4.
Very solid. Nice. Yeah, I'm kind of a mixture of all y'all. I think that overall, similar to you, Corey, I'm not the biggest Robert Rodriguez fan that I've learned this season, which is fine. He is very good for a certain aesthetic, and the aesthetic just doesn't quite speak to me as much. Blind Fate says in the chat here, some things that I was looking at, there's like some weird, like there's some spins and flips that people talked about on Twitter and things. Not my bag. I know it's a stylistic choice. There are people taking cover behind weird tables. Some of the action just didn't quite hit with me. And since most of this episode was an action scene, not quite my favorite, which is interesting. And I want to talk a lot about kind of directors as we go forward. Overall, the concept for the episode, I liked quite a bit. I was cool with everyone coming together for one final battle for the town. I thought, like you said, Charles, there were a lot of good payoffs for it, for things that we had as far as, like, I loved Fennec being able to finally be the assassin of the group. I like Chrysanthemum really acting as the muscle. Like, it was like a D&D party really coming together as for a final fight. All made sense. I think Boba learning to kind of care for a territory of people after being on his own is a really nice arc. I thought they did the right stuff with that. The Cad Bane thing was a really nice end to his arc all the way back in Clone Wars. But just, I found that my issues with this series are mostly technical things and directorial execution. So I will give this one a 7.7. I think it's a good end. The series is good, but I think there's a lot to learn going forward. So let's jump into that. First of all, the last 2 episodes we've rated basically a 10 out of 10. With things here and there, because they were Mandalorian episodes, obviously. They were not really Boba Fett episodes. We talked about that in the last 2 episodes. If you missed those, go ahead, check out those conversations. We didn't really have an issue with it, because basically all these are shows that could just be called Star Wars. Like, it is what it is. But how did you guys like going back to a more Boba-centric plot in this finale? Obviously, it's the finale of his show. We knew it was coming. But did that particular part of it take you out of it? Or did you feel like you were kind of coming back home in a way?
I think I have mixed feelings about. I can't really answer this without talking about the season, at least kind of as a whole, a little bit, because like, I think I've been like trying really, really hard to have a really positive spin on the fact that this show had lots of other stuff that had nothing to do with the title of the show. You know what I mean? Like, we had this Luke and Grogu stuff, which is kind of oddly placed, and then like I feel like what I was afraid was going to happen going into the final episode did happen, which was like we spent all this time doing spin-off stuff at the end of the season, and then they tried to tie it all up together in one episode, and that was really hard for me to get my head around. Like, Grogu just showed up like in an X-Wing flown by R2-D2 right in the middle of a battle. Like, that was so out of place for me. And like, so, I felt like it was too difficult to tie up all the loose ends that they need to tie up. I enjoyed getting to see all the Boba Fett stuff at the very end. But I think I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little disappointed with kind of how it all came together at the very, very end.
Yeah, Angelia has a great point in the chat that there were some moments where it felt like we were in a hurry, but then there were times when people were just walking around.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and I think that is
bizarre.
Which I think is something we've talked about pacing on almost every show in Bounty Hunt for one reason or another. And I think some directors like Deborah Chow is incredibly good at that. And I think for our aesthetic, it seems like Robert Rodriguez just has a different idea of the pacing that he wants in his episodes. And like you said, Corey, the Bryce Dallas Howards of it all, the Dave Filoni's of it all just kind of seem to be more in line with what I think Star Wars has set up. And Robert Rodriguez just takes a different spin, and it's just a little harder to key into. That's a great point.
Yeah. I think what's strange is that Boba Fett was one of the characters I cared the least about by the end of this show.
Sure.
Not because I don't like Boba Fett, like I do. I was interested in the story they told about him, but like I was more excited for the, 5 total minutes of screen time we had of Cad Bane. I found myself really enjoying Chrysanthemum. Like it, and seeing his little
how many
stories.
blaster bolts will he take?
Really, though, that man is on something to just still be roaming around. But like it was odd to feel that way. And the way that I've tried to have my own kind of positive mindset about it, Corey, because you mentioned this, like, the title of the show is The Book of Boba Fett, and I know we talked about it before. I think it was last week I said on the show, good TV is good TV. I'm trying to look at it like the people running the Mandoverse, if you will, felt it was important enough to put some of those things in this show. I think maybe part of it was strategic to pull people into this show that maybe weren't watching it. But I'm trying to think like, well, then they're saving time in Mando season 3 where they're not telling that story. So there must be stuff that's even more important, that's even more impactful, or at least that's my hope. I hope we then don't spend half the season telling one-off stories that aren't that impactful. But that's kind of what I'm telling myself to feel better about all of that.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's obvious at this point that I don't know if we've actually said this on the show. We've definitely said it like to each other though, that the show absolutely should have been called The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett. Like that would have really made it a lot easier, I think, for folks to, like I have mixed feelings about that criticism that's all over the internet. People are like, this show is not even about Boba Fett and it's called The Book of Boba Fett. And I think that's a little stupid, like in my opinion, like to get that, to be that heated about it. Like, but I do think it's a valid criticism and it would have been really easy to change if that was always their intention. I mean, how could it not have been their intention to make this an extension of The Mandalorian? Like it's got the chapter thing. Like it's very similar. Like it's very similar to Mandalorian, but they didn't do that, and for whatever reason, and I think it hurt them. As simple as titling the show what they did, I think it kind of hurt them.
Yeah, I guess that would have thrown off what episode was it? 5 or 4?
Yeah, right. When it was just the Mandalorian.
Just the Mandalorian came in, so that would have killed that anticipation of the episode, I guess. If people are like,
I suppose.
But I mean, just for one episode, or the story as a whole would have been great. Probably would have been better if it was called The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, just to give you some kind of idea that this is going on within
the Mandoverse.
The Mandoverse, if you will. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because you guys make it a good point that for some reason this show has inspired more heated debate than anything in a long time from either side. It's either
in an unhealthy way, to be honest.
Yeah. Like if you don't like Robert Rodriguez's spinning action, you're an idiot and hate all stuff. Or it's like if you like the Book of Boba Fett, you're a moron. And I'm like, everyone needs stop. All of that is either side is like
we haven't
insane.
seen this. We haven't seen this level of divisiveness since The Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, in my opinion. And I don't like that at all. I think that's bad I think it's bad for the fan community. I think it kind of could have been easily prevented, to be honest. Like, I don't really understand why they went the way that they did.
I mean, ultimately,
odd choices all around. I think the whole show. I think it'll be a good way to put it.
odd choices, and I think that when we hit the nail on the head the other week, but like, good TV is just good TV. Like, you gotta do a little more work on this one to manage expectations of what's coming your way. And I think that obviously, we're going to talk about the future shows at the end of this episode, but I think that may already be in the works to be adjusted. But let's talk specifically about the action. Wes, you talked a lot about the way you liked the battle scenes in this, which they were a little longer, and Robert Rodriguez obviously came onto the Star Wars scene with the Boba Fett fights in Mandalorian Season 2 that were so intense. And then in the pilot, we talked way back when, 7 weeks ago, in the pilot about how we thought they were kind of slow, and then the Mandalorian episodes were amazing. Like, action has been all over the place.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think as a whole of a episode that was basically one giant action scene? What parts really hit for you well? What parts maybe still left you kind of head scratching a little bit? What did you think about the combat for the final battle of Mos Espa?
If you take away some of the odd scenes of, like bending behind tables where they can just shoot under it and kill you. I was trying to grasp like the battle as a whole, and I really enjoyed it. One thing that I was always scratching my head about was there's got to be more people than this, right? There's got to be more Pikes, or there's got to be more people working for the Pikes that can take over this entire city. It felt like it was 14 people against 16 people.
Team deathmatch.
Yeah, like in a battle, in a battle, there's usually more people than that, just so they can sway the odds. And then you have like these 4 or 5 major characters that cannot be stopped by the common man, So like your Cad Bane and your Chrysanthemum and Fennec Shand. So that kind of swayed the tide in Boba's favor, but they were being held off by these giant Scorpenic droids. Thank you very much.
Scorpenic. There was in the chat. Yeah, unused.
Yeah, thank you very much,
droids
Jacob.
From Attack of the Clones. Is that right? They were droids made up for episode 2. So bringing episode 2 very Boba Fett intensive. So that was kind of a cool nod. I like that a lot.
A very cool spin on the droidicas. So I really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I'll say that I really like it was either love or hate for me with all the action. Like,
same.
All the Rancor stuff was fantastic. Loved all the Rancor stuff. That was like by far the best part of it. Honestly, once the Rancor comes into the scene, everything kind of to the end, I think is very, very good. Like, I think it's all very good. The droids are really, really cool. I think you would be crazy if you didn't look at the combat and be like, does nobody have any tactical experience whatsoever? Because it's like, I mean, I have personally never been in a combat situation. Shocker, right? I can tell you that I wouldn't just run in a straight line from these things. Like,
it's okay. It's okay to do that.
Or empty thousands
cover.
Thousands of shots at the shields as well. Like, this isn't working. This isn't working. It was 30 minutes of people just shooting at shields, and I'm like, bro, like
nothing happening. I know. And then and even it's even just beyond that, like the Scorpion droids or whatever, like were missing a lot.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
with their droids and their huge
an alley.
tank-looking things in an alley, and like it was pretty goofy to me. Just like the entire tactical combat thing. They look badass though.
It
Yeah,
was
it's an
super
amazing. I want to fight these things in a
Yeah.
video game. Let's be clear. Like
For
do a
sure.
quick. You like, yeah,
sure.
you got to do a quick time sequence to like jump over it and stab a lightsaber into it, like Din was doing. That was cool by the end, but.
Did anyone else hear Anakin saying "hit the nose" whenever they saw
I
it?
do
There's,
now.
like the middle.
I do
That's
Um,
fantastic.
I definitely
That's
agree with what
fantastic.
you're saying, Corey. And Andrew Bell on our team brought that up in Slack, and so I kind of credit him with saying that first. But it's the tactical stuff was tough, but on the flip side of that, some of the moments were so dang good. Like when they sent out the Twi'lek to go deliver his
hilarious.
demands or whatever, or like
I wish
deliver
they'd
his
shot him
surrender.
in the head. I'm so
I know you hate
glad
that
he's
guy.
not
Come
dead.
on,
but
Major
I say
Domo.
that I say
God,
that
Eric.
to say that when Mando and Boba Fett came out on the jetpacks right then, and then we had like the knee rocket and all stuff, like that was sick.
Yep, the flip
was,
over
yeah.
each other, like the two of them with the camera going around. I'm like,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, that
That
like
was rad.
spinning Avengers kind of shot was really
Yeah,
cool.
that was sick. That was
Uh,
really sick.
And the Rancor stuff that you mentioned, Corey, I kid you not, I laughed so hard when he like smacked through the pillar that the guy was hiding behind. Like he hid behind it and he just went
Oh,
through
yeah.
it and smashed him in the wall. And the whole time the Rancor is on its torment, like the first time that I was watching this episode, I'm yelling at my TV, eat somebody.
Yes.
Hey, eat somebody. And then he finally ate the guy. And I was like,
Yeah, that was very
It
good.
took so long. We got a Wilhelm scream out of the guy right before
Yeah.
that got eaten. Got
When he
smacked
tosses
back.
him
Yeah,
a
got
country
thrown
mile.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And those scenes were so cool. And Blind Fates, you just hit something in the chat that I completely agree that we had all that happen, and then we had the Major Domo and Pelimoto together, which are two of the most, as people who listen to Bounty Hunt know, two of my most iffy characters. They were hiding behind a table with no cover, cracking jokes during a massacre, essentially. And it is the same kind of deal as the speeder chase back at Robert
Yeah.
Rodriguez's last episode, where the over-reliance on like the silliness of stuff kind of takes away from the stakes of the whole moment. Like we have this moment. Oh, and I'm not saying you need to be brutal in order to be Star Wars. It's just the total inconsistencies with like the acting in those moments doesn't quite work. Like there's a moment, there's a way I talk about acting sometimes when I'm watching something of like people aren't in the same show or aren't in the same movie. And it felt like Pelly and the Major Domo were in a different show than the mods, who were in a different show than Boba Fett and Din, who were in a different show than Cad Bane. And it's like,
Yeah.
you kind of need to have everyone in the same universe in order to make the stakes work. So when you did have those moments where everyone kind of lined up, it's really cool. But it does seem like it's Robert Rodriguez's directing style to, again, this is all ideas, all hypotheticals, but it seems like he maybe gives a little more over to the actors, like individual, like, what do you want to improv? What do you want to do? Instead of kind of having notes for how to act it as a whole.
Yeah.
So
It's
we'll
like-
see.
It's
know?
like Boba and Fennec are in Star Wars, I would say. They fit
Yep.
there.
Din
Pelly
absolutely is in Star Wars.
and Din. Pelly and the Major Domo, whatever his name is, they're straight up Looney Tunes. Like Pelly actually
they are.
runs the exact same way as Elmer Fudd. And she was actually hunting rats in an episode. Like that was straight up Elmer
Yeah.
Fudd.
Check the
Right.
chat right now. We had two people at the same time saying it felt like an SNL skit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
can see that.
Yeah.
And then I feel like
and
the mods are in a
mods-
CW show.
They are.
Yeah,
The
oh my
mods are
God.
absolutely in a CW show. That is absolutely what this is.
I don't
Like,
think she's British. It sounds like a fake British accent to seem different. It might be. She might be. But it does. CW is exactly
Yeah.
the vibe.
Yeah.
I know this. Everybody on the internet is making fun of the spin move that dude did, and
Okay, I was
I
making
get
sure.
I get it.
I don't go
I
on.
agree.
I don't go on and see the discourse that happens, but I saw that
Yeah.
and I saw it the first time and I was like, that wasn't needed. I was like, but maybe
No,
I mean,
maybe I missed it. So
like,
I watched
have
it
you-
the second
do you
time. I was like,
remember- you-
wasn't needed.
no, wasn't needed. It was totally out of place. And like, I
His
think my
direction
favorite
is
thing,
also going into the bullet fire. And I'm like, if you're doing if you wanted to spin out of Chrysanthemum's arm to get a shot, that works. If you want to spin away
No,
to get to
like,
cover, that works.
he
It was
lets
just
go and then spins,
spins in the middle of
it's like,
nowhere.
Like, I will say that my favorite thing ever that I saw is the It's like you remember the starlight or whatever, the do. You ever seen those where people are spinning and they like flying through space and shit? I saw that with that character and I was like, that's hilarious.
Here you go. Here's
so funny.
I really want to show what y'all are talking
All right,
about.
so
so we're watching this scene here. They're so the mods are with Chrysanthemum, which I'm like, great, fine pairing, and then here comes Din.
I gotta roll it back. Did it
already happen?
It already happened.
Oh yeah, when Chrysanthemum's trying to get through the shield, which was great.
This was a great part, how they show you can't actually just walk into it real easy.
Yeah,
Here it is.
behind that.
And then they're trying to get him away before the Pyke show
Here they
up.
come.
Let's
go.
of
Throw
me.
him off. Do his stupid spin. Why?
Why did he do that, man?
Well, and here's the thing. There are certain, the biggest discourse on this I saw was the director of Mortal Kombat tweeted how stupid it was, and everyone started dunking on him. It's like, you made Mortal Kombat. And
What? That's such a strange pull.
Right. That movie is ridiculous. And that's like the style of Mortal Kombat. I don't like it, but it is that B movie kind of like over ridiculous stylization. And I think the visual language of this show had set it up to be something a little more legitimate, and I think a little more tactile. And I think you set up a realistic expectation, and then you come with this, which makes me actually I want to ask you guys about. I do have one more comment about the mods that I saw on Reddit this morning. I too have avoided the discourse as much as I could, Wes, but I know it's not fun, but I do still casually browse Reddit, and I occasionally visit some of the Star Wars ones, but particularly when it's live shows and stuff, I stay out of them. Villainy.
Yeah, I know it's really dangerous. But I saw a really cool image that somebody like took one of the shots that had like all the mods in it, and they cropped them out and photoshopped them out and put like a Coruscant street as a backdrop of the shot. And they were like, I think this works. I think this works really well. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I like this a lot. It looked really, really cool. So like, I want to be clear that we think that the mods in general are a really, really cool concept.
I love the concept. I absolutely love the concept.
It feels weird on Tatooine. And I get some of the justification that people have said of like, that's why it works, is because they're on Tatooine. I mean, they're these poor kids on this desert planet that want to be this, they want to be that Coruscant high life kind of person. Mm-hmm. That's who they're like pretending and striving to be. I get that. That's a cool idea, but that doesn't mean it visually worked on the show.
Yeah.
And, and it stood out to me. And, but Coruscant, put those characters in Coruscant, man, I'd be all about that.
Well, and I think that's the cool thing about this, like this season. We've seen this in Mando season 1 and Mando season 2, but I think this season specifically really showed how much a single director's vision can sway an episode. Like, even if they weren't the Mando, like, we love the Mando episodes, obviously. Bryce Dallas Howard and Filoni did great. But that second episode might still be the best episode of the season. Like, Corey, you said it was one of your favorite episodes of Star Wars television of all time.
It's still, at the end of the season, I will still confidently say that's my favorite single episode of live action TV that I've ever seen. The train scenes we're talking about.
Which is like, and it's interesting, and that director was Steph Green, who hasn't done any other Star Wars so far. And I think that going forward, it's going to be really interesting to see which directors are given which projects and how often you switch directors, because as we know, the next show we think, at least we're getting, is Obi-Wan, which is all Deborah Chow, every episode, the entire way. And do you guys think that, one, if Robert Rodriguez has done the entire season, do you think it would have been a little more solid, or do you think it would have been just more of the stuff we don't care for? Or
I don't
do you
know,
think do you think that shows like this that have all of these characters and all these things, is it realistic to have one director go all the way through, or do you think that more directors just need to have like arcs or something like that?
That's a really good question. I think we're almost kind of branching into the sort of meta speculation area a little bit, because we don't know how this stuff is made behind the scenes, right?
That's true.
But I will say, after watching the documentary stuff for like the first season of Mandalorian, where Dave Filoni and Favreau talked about like choosing different directors and how they all work together, and it was all very collaborative, and like it seemed like maybe they got a little too confident in that working really, really well without giving enough direction like to the directors, right? As a whole, right? Because like I think it worked really, really well in the first season of Mandalorian, but like it still, there were a couple odd episodes in the first season of Mandalorian that felt a little more out of place than other episodes. But the second season I think felt more cohesive. So it's almost like they figured out how to make that multi-director thing work. And like maybe gave a little more direction, and then maybe it almost was like they got too cocky with it, right? They're like, oh yeah, you go to this episode, you go to this episode. This is how we need to get from point A to point B in the whole season. Yeah, but like it doesn't really feel like they gave folks like enough direction between episodes almost. I mean, think about how many loose ends we had to tie up in this last single episode. Like,
Yeah.
Well, see, that I think it goes towards. I don't think it was necessarily a director problem or a number of different director problem. I actually do think it is a bit of a story, because we've seen this done very well. Like you just said with Mandalorian, look at the High Republic initiative. I mean, they brought on a huge team of people, and the story is airtight so far. And so everyone, it seems like they're hitting home runs, even though stylistically they all do things a little bit differently. Really, it should be, in my mind at least, a similar situation to live action TV. If you have a team of directors, there's a solid story, we know exactly what we're telling, how we need to tell it, then I think this stuff would be less kind of glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
But there,
which is Favreau. I mean, Favreau's the writer on everything. So
which is Favreau. Yeah, because at the end of the season, I mean, there were plot points that were totally dropped that we spent a significant amount of time on. There were things that were tied up that for me did not feel like they were either given the time they deserved or they were rushed, or maybe it didn't really feel all that conclusive. And I realize I'm sounding pretty down on this episode. I still enjoyed it. I still enjoyed the season as a whole, but
for sure,
there are some pretty obvious things, I think. I mean, we spent how long did we spend with the Tuskens? And then it was just like, it was over. The Cad Bane thing really interested me too. I just want to bring that up really quickly. Like, why was he so loyal to the Pikes that he was like willing to die for them? That seemed odd to me. But then he immediately stabbed them in the back and told Boba that they killed the Tuskens. And it was like, okay, like, what's your angle? I don't really.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I think that was kind of like, I feel that way specifically about Cad Bane and like Cobb Vanth, and like we got these really cool like secondary characters that we dropped in like right at the very end of like, you know, I feel like as cool and badass as a character as Cad Bane is, I feel like maybe he didn't really quite get the screen time he deserved, right? Like he showed up, he had his really cool entrance, and then I mean he got killed pretty badly. Like, I mean, he got beat pretty bad, right? Like, I mean, like we've seen him in Clone Wars and stuff, and good God, he's faced off with Jedi and all kinds of crazy shit, right? And
his comment to Boba Fett did not feel earned to me at all. Like it almost like it was supposed to be a through line through the show. He's like, I knew you were a killer. And then he stabbed him. Like it felt like a line at the end of something where like, oh, we've been exploring. Is Boba Fett like just a murderer, or is he trying to change? But I didn't feel like that was explored. So there was like no payoff to that comment. It was just odd. It was.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting thing too, because, you know, with Star Wars television, you're in a really interesting spot because you want to have, like, to bring in someone like Cad Bane is obviously a reward for someone like Clone Wars. And you have this giant roster of characters from animation and from books and from movies. And if they don't bring them in, it's like, well, why are you bringing in this random other person? Why don't you bring in Cad Bane? Right?
Yeah.
And then when you do bring them in, you have to make sure it's like a big deal. So you can't be like, well, of course they know each other. Didn't they watch Clone Wars? But also you have to assume people haven't watched Clone Wars. And it's like this weird balancing act that I think they're going to find in the next, honestly, 5 years of live action projects. Like when Ahsoka came in, you had to assume most people hadn't watched Clone Wars that are watching Mandalorian. So you had to find a way to bring her in that didn't treat Clone Wars viewers as idiots, but also didn't make Mandalorian people feel like they were behind. So same thing with Cad Bane. And I think that balance sometimes works, and sometimes we get this kind of thing where it feels like there's a missing piece that they're trying to explain, but also not trying to dumb down. And I think Cad Bane dying in live action, honestly, as much as we all love animation, obviously, is at this point a bigger deal than him dying in animation, because you make the character and it's like dying in a movie rather than dying in a book, which is still going to be a thing.
I did have to explain that to a friend of mine. He said that character, Cad Bane, is amazing. Where is he from? So I had to say, you know, he was in Clone Wars and he showed up in Rebels, and then but he's almost in every aspect. I think he was captured once and put in prison, right? Maybe twice. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he gets out of every situation because he has all the gadgets,
unbeatable.
Right?
I mean, he's like Palpatine of the bounty hunters.
Yeah.
Right?
And so it was amazing. And you're like, and then when in this episode, when he steps up against the Rancor, you're like, oh, there's no way he could stop a Rancor. And then he's just like, no,
he does.
fire.
It's badass.
He's not even.
I have
phased.
fire.
Yes, I loved it.
Yeah.
It was
Such a
awesome.
Six shot.
That
That
was
is
great.
so cool.
Yeah.
But
Boba
then,
riding
yeah,
Rancor.
but then Boba defeated him what I would call fairly easily, which was a little disappointing for me, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
yeah.
especially because they didn't. It's not like they showed Cad Bane, because we know he's an older guy by this point in the timeline. It's not like they showed him like a Logan, type of Wolverine depiction of him. They showed he was very capable. He was beating Boba Fett handily,
Mhm.
and then it just got flipped very suddenly.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
And as we go forward with these shows, like Rangers of the New Republic, which is still on the docket, Obi-Wan, Ahsoka, like all these things are going to be all these Mandoverse projects, essentially, which is, I mean, they've said that their whole goal is to eventually bring them in like a Defenders, Avengers-esque collaboration show.
Mhm.
I think it's going to be interesting to see how they balance it, which makes me want to ask like some now big picture questions. If you're a fan of our roundtable, these are the overarching questions. Fellas, unfortunately, when the episodes took a dip, we saw interviews with Timur Morrison and Ming-Na Wen that had to say, like, just wait till the end of the season because people were being assholes. That sucked that people did that. However, now that we are here, let's actually address that question. In retrospect, looking back at the season, how do you think the season worked as a whole? We already talked about a little bit the directing or the writing, but just more big picture. Look at the Book of Boba Fett. What is your report on how it worked now that you know the whole story?
That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
I think the purpose is that kind of what you're asking. What was the purpose of the season? Is that good?
Yeah, what's the purpose of this season? And if you're looking at it, grading the execution of like this is what they wanted to do, and this is how it ended up.
Okay, I think two things they wanted to do this season that they essentially did fairly well. All right. One, they wanted to show how the hell Boba Fett was still alive after Return of the Jedi. All right, and
Done.
I think they stamped that real well, right? Like he survived the Sarlacc pit. He lived with the Tuskens. That was badass. All right, super
God, that was
pleased
good.
with the execution and that storyline of having him. So in Legends, I don't know if you guys even know this. In Legends, he was rescued by Dengar in his name.
Dengar.
Yeah, Dengar.
Yep.
He was rescued by Dengar and a slave dancer from Jabba's palace, right? Who escaped before the sail barge blew up. Dengar apparently has a heart of gold, right? He kind of took this girl under his wing and they found Boba Fett in the desert. That's what happened in the Legend storyline, right?
Yep.
I think that taking him to the Tuskens and he lived with them for 5 years. That's been confirmed outside of the story, which was not very clear in the show, but he lived with the Tuskens for 5 years. That is way better of a story than having him be found just by some rando, bounty hunter. Like,
I love that story. I love that idea.
Right. If that was the purpose of the show, then we could have been done after like 4 episodes, right? I loved it. I loved it. I think the second part of the second thing that they were trying to do with the season is they wanted to move forward the Mandalorian Grogu story in a meaningful way so that they don't have to spend a lot of time on like it would be, I can understand where they're coming from. It would have been weird if we went to season 3 and like the first episode, Mandalorian gets Grogu back. That'd be weird as hell. Like we had this huge finale at the end of season 2. Like if you were binging it, like after season 3 is done and you watch season 2 finale, then you start season 1 or season 3, and then suddenly Grogu is there. Like that would be super weird, right? Now I think if they open the 3rd season with Grogu being there, it won't be as big of a shocker. I think it'll feel.
Don't skip the recap, folks. Don't press skip recap.
I know. Yeah, I do have concerns that we're gonna start the 3rd season. I don't know why I keep saying first. We're gonna start the first episode of the 3rd season of Mandalorian with Grogu in Din's arms, and a whole hell of a lot of fans who skip Boba Fett are gonna be like, "Whoa, what the hell? We just got rid of him!" Like, I'm afraid that's going to happen. It's going to cause some discourse online if it happens that way. And I think that was the purpose. Did they move that story forward in a meaningful way? Yes. I think we got the Luke stuff was awesome. I think we got Mandalorian and like now he's been cast out by the other Mandalorians now. I think that's really cool. That was all executed really, really well. But I will echo again what Charles had to say previously is that like we thought it was a huge risk and a huge cool thing to like shelf Grogu to like tell other Din stories, and they've made that abundantly clear that's not going to happen. And
we ain't interested in that.
Manage your expectations, but
I'm
not crazy about that, to be honest.
I mean, we praise Disney for sending Grogu away at the end of Mando season 2, and now it feels like JK.
It's risky. That's a risky move, and usually like it pays off. It doesn't pay off in the short term. And I don't think Disney wants to try like test those waters.
Yeah,
they know that that Baby Yoda, that Grogu makes the money, brings people back to watch it. So they had to find a way.
To me, man.
This is a lone. It is a lone wolf and cub story, and I think we knew that for the first 2 seasons. But I think that we just undervalued the idea that no, the entire life is lone wolf and cub. This is what it's about. Monetarily aside, if that's the story that Favreau had from day one, I guess we all thought that it was going to be more giant Mandalorian. I agree, like that. I wish that would have been it. But it will
that's
be
actually
that's
actually an interesting question. Why did we think that? By the way, why did we think that this show is not about Grogu?
Because I honestly think the merchandising made us a little sick of the character.
I think
that's mine at least. I like him when I see him, but I think that it got pushed so hard that because my we all have a little bit of the contrarian brain or whatever. Is like, dude, we get it, stop, and then that. Yeah. And how honestly well the last episode of season 2 of Mando was shot. It was shot with such gravity and such importance that was like, oh my goodness. Well, we believed what they were telling us. We believed Grogu was being let go because of the emotional sacrifice and how skillful Pedro Pascal played that moment.
And he wasn't gone long enough for us to miss him. That's what makes these things important. We have to basically have enough action sequence, other characters, more storylines to fill our brain for us to forget about Grogu for that little bit. That's what I'm gonna bring this back around to wrestling. They do a really good job about that. Good. People get hurt and they have back problems, and it takes them. They're like, oh, he's retired, he can't come back, so he's out for a year and a half, or she, and they come back. You're like, oh my god, I can't believe this person's back. They needed to do that. They did. I don't know if they looked long term for this. I mean, I'm sure they did. I'm not Disney. But if you had strung this out for a year and a half, maybe 2 seasons, and you see this character come back up in season 5, season 6, oh my God, you'll lose your mind. But can you fill in? Can you make the money in those other 2 seasons to keep people grasped on this show? And I don't know that they could do that.
Yeah, we will keep watching the Mandalorian. We will keep watching the Mandalore show. We want to see Bo-Katan. We want to see the Darksaber lore. But how many Disney Plus subscribers are wanting to see the cute little green dude?
Yeah. And I get that. I get that to some degree. But I hope that managing our expectations here. I do hope that it is a wish of mine that Grogu does not define Star Wars live action TV. That is a concern of mine. If he shows up and is the main focus of the Kenobi show, I will be
oh my God!
Very
disappointed. Again,
I'm gonna put this camera right on Charles. Look at his face.
Listen. Blasphemy.
I
know that's what I'm saying. But if they do that, that would be bad.
No, they're not going to do that. But I think there's a few points that I want to make about this. I am fine with Grogu. I'm fine with him being part of the story. I still have questions though about how much of this story can we really tell within the Mandalorian? Because Homeboy's still a baby that's taking naps and eating frogs, and it's like he's not going to mature. His species is not going to mature to that appreciable of an extent. Like, he learned how to jump after essentially 3 seasons of being on screen, right? So
apparently he's able to make choices about morality and his future.
Or wield a lightsaber,
I guess.
But I'm
very
guess what
confused by
how
much. What the hell do they
want
to do? What do they want to do? Do they want him just to be a cute baby everyone wants to protect, or they want to make him be trained as a Jedi? You can't have both, man. You can't.
Well, can I answer your question too that spurred all of this to begin with? Eric,
off of the Grogu chat for a second.
How did the season work in retrospect? And I actually do think that it was successful. I think this was an experiment of a spin-off show. Yeah, I think so. It was a spinoff of a show that had a very huge following that the majority of Star Wars fandom has really embraced in The Mandalorian. I think this was a success. I think it was not always executed well. I think there are, again, some plot problems that I brought up. There were definitely some technical problems, but overall, it was a success. It told the story of Boba Fett. And I think it was inevitable that we saw a heavier amount of criticism for this show than we have for Mandalorian, because if you're bringing a show to the table or a story to the table about characters that we've known, since the original trilogy, there is going to be years and years and years of expectations, building things up in your head, et cetera, et cetera. That's not there for a brand new story like The Mandalorian.
That's true.
We take that story as it comes and we accept it because we know nothing else. But that is why I'm not surprised. I don't think that this show was, I don't think it was like hated or anything by the community. I think, overall, though, people were more critical of it for that reason. So it was always, in a way, set up for a little bit of failure. I don't think it was a failure, though. I do think it was a success overall.
An OT character. Anytime you bring in an OT character, I think specifically that's a big friggin' risk to take, and it's a good way to put it. Kind of set up for failure. I wouldn't call the show a failure, though.
No.
I know I was pretty negative in kind of my spiel about it. I think the two things that they did that I said they wanted to accomplish, I think they did accomplish really well, which was saving Boba Fett and telling his story, and then moving forward the Grogu Mando story. I love those two pieces, and I think they did that really, really well. I think the show was a success. I would call it a success for sure.
We saw Boba Fett riding a Rancor. That's a success.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll do something bold here. I'm gonna take this back to Star Wars books, because here's how I view this season: is that more than anything, I think this season proved the importance of artistic execution and who's behind the camera. And I think it's the same thing as who's behind a book, because there are certain books that are about characters we love, like Leia, right? OT character you brought up, Corey. And if you're reading something like Bloodline, it's Claudia Gray nails it. Even though it's a familiar character, it's going to be a great time. I'm going to enjoy that wholeheartedly. Alternately, if it's a character I know nothing about, like Dark Disciple, if it's an Asajj Ventress and Quinlan Vos thing, it's executed well, so I love it. Versus books like Lord of the Sith or Thrawn Alliances that have familiar characters, but if the execution isn't as good, I'm not going to have as good a time. Mm-hmm. All to say, I think this season, one of the things that I wanted was, will the episodes that I didn't like quite as much retroactively be made better by the ending of the show? And for me, like the Streets of Mos Espo, we were the most disappointed with. The pilot we weren't in love with, and this finale wasn't my favorite. All those aren't necessarily made better by the story as a whole. I see the story as a whole, and I agree with everything you guys have said about it being successful for what it wanted to do, as far as the larger narrative and with answering those Boba Fett questions, Corey. But my issues with those were never really about the larger story. It was about the execution of the person behind the camera and how you make the thing work. If your acting is good, your action is good, and your pacing is good, and the shots are interesting, I'm going to have a good time watching your TV show. I hope that the larger narrative makes sense, but I want to watch good TV. I want to read a good book. So going forward, I think the lessons, regardless of what the bigger picture is with Grogu, with Boba, with Mando, I hope the lesson is just, if you have a good person making your product, it'll be a good time. And I think that is overly simplistic, but also I think this, more than the last two seasons of Mando, more than Bad Batch, more than Clone Wars and Rebels, shows that to me. Mm-hmm. So that's where I am going forward, which is why I think that Obi-Wan is going to be incredible, because Deborah Chow has proven her mastery. Ewan McGregor has proven his mastery. Like, we got good people, we got good product.
Yeah. And, I think we just have to remember that I am just happy to get more Star Wars live action TV. You know what I mean?
Every day. Every day.
I mean, let's be clear. We're not trying to minimize any criticism that folks have by saying, just shut up and be thankful you got Star Wars TV. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that I personally am excited to have something even to criticize. You know what I mean? Like if we are going to have negative things to say about it, I'm just super excited that we're getting these stories told and that we got friggin' Boba Fett.
How spoiled are we,
Oh my God. Yeah, it's insane.
And how about the fact that we just, how many hours did we get together on weekends that we otherwise wouldn't have had just talking about these things?
Nice.
Whether we were criticizing, whether we were praising. I mean, I'm just super thankful to have had this time with y'all.
And I do think there was a whole lot to love about the season too, in general. Like I think
let's
there was
go there.
Stuff to love.
Some of your favorite moments. Let's just rattle some off as we're kind of wrapping up this season of Bounty Hunt. What were some of our favorite moments?
Wes.
What is that?
I don't
is that? Wes, tell our audio listeners.
Okay, so we're looking at first, right before this happened, Din had been hit by quite a few blaster shots, and they hit all of his armor. They never got in between his armor, so that was amazing.
That's helpful. It's plot armor.
So Boba sacrificed himself to get in front of him and used his knee rockets to shoot at the pikes that were bearing down on them. So I was wondering if these were going to show up in all his little gadgets. I'm not sure I remember that he had knee rockets, but damn, they were in this one.
Dude, both the knee rocket ones. Then the one where he like hit that pose where he was like, bam! Where he like literally, it was like a dancer pose where he had to hit the angle with the knee and it was like, pa!
It's like the crane from Karate Kid. It's like the move that he does.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, for sure. Everybody has been begging for Boba Fett to use all of his cool toys, and man, were we rewarded this episode with this
Flamethrower.
So that was great.
Awesome.
Where's some other stuff we really loved about this season?
The Tusken Warrior, that character in particular was so cool. I don't know why I thought this. I was just blanking in the moment, but when Boba Fett left and was like, I'm going to go get more help, I 100% for some reason thought Tusken Warrior was coming back with like a new group of Tuskens. Yeah, and then it was the Rancor, and I was like, "Oh yeah, duh, the Rancor."
Oh, right, that.
But that thing. But all the Tusken stuff, him making his gaffy stick, that was absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And then overall, Cobb Vanth and Cad Bane, every moment either character was on the screen, I was like literal edge of my seat. I loved all of that.
Yeah, I'll totally back up that. I'll expand all the Tusken stuff to say all the cultural development that we got about the Tuskens was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. That was, if I had to pick any highlight of the season for me, I think that like all that Tusken stuff was so good, man.
You cannot
which is so funny because that
Raiders
first
the same.
No, you can't. And
they did a really good job of
that
telling
first
that
episode,
story.
I was pretty critical of that too, right? You remember that? I was like, man, it feels like the Tuskens are kind of goofy. But then we got all that other stuff, and I was like, man, I was all about the Tuskens.
They spent so much time on it. We thought that was going to be the show. We thought they were going to be. It was going to be.
It was a Tusken show,
like a Tusken centered show. And then we were talking about it. Like we didn't see the Tusken that had taught him how to fight, right? So that person is definitely coming back. And I was like, wow, they really pushed like that. They were destroyed, every one of them, even like so. But I mean, we still didn't see that Tusken. Is it still there? Same with Cad Bane. His little chest blinker was still going whenever the camera cut off. So
it's an ICD that's
stabbed through the chest. I think I absolutely agree with those moments. Another one that I like, I'm gonna hit not the Mando stuff as much yet, but still staying with Boba stuff. Like all the stuff with the Tuskens, obviously fantastic. I really love Madame Garza's Sanctuary. I thought that set was really cool. Mm-hmm. I thought the whole vibe of that was seeing a cantina that was like exciting and was like filled with stuff. And Garza, I thought was just a great character. I'm very bummed that we did lose her, but I thought the way she just kind of owned that thing, showed a Twi'lek in power that was also like super hot and was like also very mature. And it had all these moments of like, I'm very powerful and awesome. I thought that was really cool to see. Just as a set piece. Of course, Max Rebo loved that he had another gig. You know, we love our guy.
Had a gig.
I hope he survived. Please tell me he survived. I really hope he survived.
Max has to survive. And then, of course, guys, N1 Starfighter. We got a Naboo Starfighter.
Yeah, dude, I forgot about
all the Mando stuff.
In the pod racer track. I mean, that moment.
I think, honestly, and this is again highlighting the thing that I was talking about earlier, Eric, is that like when you conclude, I think Jacob called it the Game of Thrones effect in the chat earlier.
Yeah, right.
When you conclude with call it a negative experience. When you conclude with a negative experience, it unfortunately colors the rest of the experience, right? And like, I wish that we could have ended the season like one episode back.
Yeah.
like if they would have put this scene like before we got all the Mando stuff and the last two episodes were not even about Boba Fett, I think we would be like, holy smokes, this was an incredible season. But here we are. I think there was definitely more to like than there was to dislike.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, we got all the great stuff with Boba. Fennec Shand in that fire spray sequence when she took out all those guys in the hangar when they did the infiltration was super fun. Luke Skywalker talked to Ahsoka Tano about Anakin Skywalker.
Dude.
I mean,
We didn't even
You
talk
know-
about her killing. We didn't even talk about her killing those guys at the end. That was badass.
gosh,
She
yeah.
like
hung
strung
one
that
of
guy
them.
up.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Oh my
mayor, and you
She
can see
hung
his
on
Yes.
Shays.
see his
Yeah.
big thick feet just.
She literally
Yeah,
hung
dang
him,
it,
and I'm
dude.
like,
That was
Kind of feel
dark
like
as
it would be
hell.
impossible to strangle an Ithorian because like their head's just like curved. He could just be like, shoop.
well, the
But-
two ropes go in their mouth necks, and then you just
Oh,
gotta,
maybe
you know.
that's what it is.
Yeah, I did
No,
real-
Fennec-
I did learn
Fennec
that they
was a
had.
plus.
I did learn that the Ithorians have 2 stomachs.
Yes. So, a lot of stuff obviously we love. A lot of lessons we talked about that go forward. Charles,
Mhm.
in the afternoon after the Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars tweeted again. Odd. Not a lot of tweets from the Star Wars account, but they tweeted out a poster. What did they tell us on Wednesday afternoon? I want to give you the floor.
Thank you. So they tweeted out a poster for a little show coming later on this year. We now have the specific date. That show is none other than Kenobi, right? And it's coming out May 25th. And they released
Yeah.
this teaser poster. And it is my boy, Ewan McGregor, walking through the sands of Tatooine. Beautiful shot. And he's holding a lightsaber. Y'all, he is holding a lightsaber. It looks to be Anakin's.
Yep, based on
if
the
you
emitter, it
zoom
looks like
in.
Anakin's. Yep.
And I mean, just it's beautiful. I will tell you right now, I am not managing my expectations at all. And
Yeah.
I really, truly, honestly, this is if Disney, whoever, if Kathleen Kennedy came to me and was like, "Hey, what do you want us to do? What's one thing you want us to do?" I would have chosen this. And so just seeing you again on screen and playing this character that's been my favorite since I was a literal child. I am going to come into Bounty Hunt because we're going to do Bounty Hunt for that show. I'm going to come into every episode, even if it's like the story is bad. I think I'm just going to rave about it. I really do. I'm trying to reel it in, but I
Why?
can't.
No, it's gonna be
Yeah.
amazing.
I will say that this is probably like, because I mean, I think the vast majority of Star Wars fans that are really diving in headlong into all the TV stuff are prequel kids. I think that is that is probably, if you were to put all the different ages of Star Wars fans onto a pie chart, like I think the majority would be prequel kids. I think, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I think the OT
As
fans
of now, I think so.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of OT fans. I think unfortunately we lost a lot of OT fans when prequels came out. I think we lost even more of that generation with the sequels, right? I think the vast majority of the pie chart, I'm making this shit up. Maybe I'm wrong. But maybe I think the vast majority are probably
Could be,
prequel
yeah.
kids, which makes this show the riskiest, highest stakes thing they could possibly produce. I literally cannot think of a single other story that they could tell that's as important as this. And like, I'm kind of with you, Charles. I don't know how we can manage our expectation with this. Like, please, God, let it not be bad.
Yeah.
Please let it be flawless. Holy shit. If they don't make every single episode like really, really planned and thought out, and don't just rush into it because it's Ewan, because you got Ewan back. Like if they don't treat Hayden Christensen well again, I'm gonna be really, really disappointed and upset. And like, you shouldn't say those things like going into this everything. You shouldn't be like, if this doesn't happen, then I'm gonna be upset. But I don't know if it's possible for me to feel any other way about such an important character.
Ewan doesn't need the money, which I think is key.
No,
I think that Ewan McGregor went through the prequels. Hayden Christensen went through the prequels, right? It was the mental toll that it took on them. I have to feel the pitch from Favreau and Chow for this show had to be so rock solid that they're like, hey, listen, this is gonna be good. You will not have to go through that again. It will, and I think that alone makes me excited. And also,
if they convince Hayden to come back, like it must have been a hell of a pitch for sure.
Yeah. And I think like looking at Deborah Chow's resume as well, she obviously did 2 episodes of The Mandalorian that we loved to rave about.
Do you know which one she did? Can you?
She did
The
chapter
one with
3,
the Mando's jetpacking out to, wasn't it that one?
It was the one where the Sin, where he brought Grogu back and realized that they wanted to clone him, so he fought his way out of that building.
Yeah.
So it was that one, and then it was the one, the second to last episode of season 1 where Moff Gideon came in the first time. So it was like 2 of those giant, like big action
Yeah, okay.
sequence
Those were really
things.
big.
She's also though directed an episode of Better Call Saul, American Gods, Mr. Robot, Jessica Jones, like some really cool psychological intense shows. So I'm so excited. And as the chat said, this comes out the day before Celebration. So I will already be in California. Because I'm going to Disneyland that day, so I'll get up early. So
We could
who
feasibly
knows?
watch this trailer together in person.
We can watch the episode together in person.
Holy smokes!
Yeah.
Oh, that's
first
that's the
episode.
crap. That's what you're saying. The episode. Holy shit! That comes
Yeah,
out
the first
right
episode.
before Celebration.
The day before Celebration. So
Whoa,
maybe
that's
who
nuts.
knows what they'll release that weekend. Again, we all assume it's still
That's
happening.
good-
We
that's a
haven't
good
gotten
point.
as much confirmation as I want, but given the numbers and Omicron and stuff, I feel like we're in a good place to go for it.
Mhm. Yeah, I saw some rumors this week that California is lifting some of their mandate stuff about
Yeah.
in-person events and stuff. So I think
Yeah,
I
think
might
it's gonna
buy I might buy plane tickets in the next
that's where
couple
I'm at too. I'm waiting on that. I got some
Yeah.
flight credit, but we can watch this together. Bounty Hunt, if that happens, we will try to obviously put something together. We'll be doing content all through Celebration for us that are there. I can't wait for it. I'm hoping for a teaser trailer later today during the Super Bowl. Who knows? It'd be cool.
I don't think it's happening.
Me neither.
Probably not. Manage your expectations, but that's next. Everyone, Bounty Hunt is gonna cover whatever show happens.
Mhm.
I don't think we get another show before Obi-Wan. That is in 3 months though. They could drop freaking Bad Batch was
Bad Batch.
spring.
We don't have any confirmation. They said spring, didn't they?
Well, in Star Wars Insider they did, but that would be literally between now and Obi-Wan. So they gotta just say, hey, it's next week at some point. So we'll cover it if they do. But that could be it.
Oh man, we have to watch more Star Wars.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, blah.
Oh man, jeez.
Oh yeah, this shot.
There you go.
He craned
Wes just showed us the knee rocket.
The knee
scene
rocket.
again. Oh man.
Oh
Yeah.
man. Well, fellas, as we kind of wind down here, and I am about to start day drinking and watching my pregame coverage. Any final thoughts about the first live action Star Wars spin-off, The Book of Boba Fett?
I think it was a risk. I think they pulled some things off. I think they probably learned a lot. I hope they did. I hope they learned a lot of how to do a live action spinoff well. The next one we're getting is, the Ahsoka show, I guess, is probably going to be one of the next spinoffs. Is that right? Actually, we don't know the order of the shows they're going to release, do we?
I think as of right now, we assume Bad Batch is some point this year, but live action next is Obi-Wan. Mando season 3 is rumored for like the Book of Boba Fett / like late December-ish.
Andor is the next live action.
Oh no,
show,
Andor!
right?
You're right. Oh my!
Yeah, that's
oh my god!
Is that this
Right,
year? Andor
that's
is
this
year.
year.
isn't it?
This year.
Supposedly.
That's this year.
Yeah, okay.
December
so that- all right.
30th.
December
Man,
30th.
all right, so
Mandalorian and
Mandalorian
Andor,
3.
same day.
the next two shows we're getting are not spin-off shows, they're original shows. I guess Andor is kind of a spin-off show, but it's a
Of
spin-off
Rogue
of a
One,
film,
but-
which is a little different. But
Oh my
I don't know.
god!
A spin-off of a TV show, first time they've done this, the next spin-off, I guess, would be either the Ahsoka show, which is again only kind of a spin-off, and then the Rangers of the New Republic, if that still happens, which is definitely a spin-off, right? So
Yes, yeah.
we'll see. I think that'll be the next real test. It'll probably be the Rangers of the New Republic, in my opinion.
The most
of
spin-offs,
us.
yeah.
Yeah, the most. How many levels of spin-off are there?
The spinniest of all spin-offs.
Yes.
Yeah, I
They're all
agree. It was,
spin-offs of A New Hope. Come on, let's.
it
From a
was-
certain point of view, I see how you could say that.
it was definitely a risk. I'll echo that sentiment. I still think overall it was a success. I think that it was always to a degree going to be the most heavily criticized for the reasons that I said earlier. And I'm happy we had the experience overall. I think that you're right, Corey. There were lessons to learn from this show that I think we will only grow from and get better from. So
agreed.
here's to the next one.
Yeah.
Love it.
So I think this was a good test for the creators and with CGI. So we can bring in characters that we've never seen in live action before, and people will buy into it so much that they're telling their friends, hey, so-and-so showed up. I don't know who it is, but it was amazing how they brought this character that is a cartoon into live action. Cad Bane, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Pikes, like the Pikes we saw in Clone Wars spinoff, in Bad Batch, and we saw multiple characters you can put at CGI. I mean, Luke. We got so much
Yeah.
Luke. That was amazing. And then I'm guaranteed like the months from the next set of, if there's a next book of Boba Fett or the Mandalorian's already been done there. I mean, that computer technology keeps increasing every single month. Something gets better and better and better. So we can get characters that we would never have thought to see before. And in better visual. When I step back and look at like people, the whole discourse about what Cad Bane looks like, he needs to look more like the Clone Wars one. I think they were trying to push towards it looks more like the Duros from A New Hope, but anyways,
yeah, exactly.
So they just made it look better. So
I can't wait to high five Luke Skywalker in meta in 2027 before the Mandalorian season 8. It's gonna be great.
With our VR goggles, and then like the scale that they allowed us to see on these shows, like this. Look how big this place is, and I was questioning the fact, like, why are the Pikes even here? Like, what is the point? And like, this is the point. There are so many people on Tatooine that want drugs, so this is their
that's what we've learned.
This is their user base.
Man, there's a drug problem on Tatooine. I was thinking this a little earlier too about like, I was like, of all the places to keep doing all these shows, I mean, if they don't continue to develop Tatooine as a subculture, it's a little bit risky to do all this stuff on Tatooine because like the whole point of the planet is that it's a shithole, right?
Yeah, nothing happens here.
Luke wanted to leave, right? Well, if Luke would have joined the Mafia, maybe he would have had better time. You know what I mean? So,
oh my gosh, the future is so freaking bright, and I think without shows like these that do take these kind of risks, as you guys were saying, we don't get to grow and see what works and see what doesn't. And it's really cool that we do have this model that allows them to try things, even if stuff that we personally don't love as much. They do get to learn without a risk of being canceled or without a risk of like not getting another season, and they can kind of keep working in that factory, which is fun. I do try to manage my expectations going forward. Unfortunately, the chat has just destroyed that, with Dale and Camilla saying, what if Robo-Cobb Vanth is the star of the Rangers of the New Republic in his mod Vanth? Which also, guys, if we literally traded Gina Carano for Timothy Oliphant, that's like, what a trade. That's like drafting Patrick Mahomes instead of Mitch Trubisky. That is like the greatest thing that could happen. And I mean, what a moment when they're like, hey man, this actress got outed for being super problematic. Do you actually not want to die and just make a ton of money and star in your own Star Wars show since Justified is over? Oh yeah, okay, sure.
Oh my god.
But we gotta stop. We gotta stop modding people without their consent, though. I gotta say,
Listen, Charles. Cobb is not able to make his own medical decisions right now. All right,
no,
we have to do what we have to do to save him. All
the
right?
Gamorreans have power of attorney, man.
Listen, the Gamorreans they might not be dead. We didn't see them land.
Man.
The thing is, he was shot once in the shoulder. We've seen people survive much worse than that with just some Bacta. So I'm like, yo, he's already in the Bacta tank. Like, why are you getting out the tools?
I need Timothy Oliphant, and then I need Mr. Kim from Kim's Convenience in the same show. Rangers. I mean, literally, it's called Rangers of the New Republic. He's already a marshal. Like,
it is interesting because
give him a cowboy hat.
And it does. Please
Cobb
do that.
Vanth's hat. Take it off his body and put it on Cobb Vanth.
Yeah, that's
correct. It does directly
this is my hat now.
It does directly mirror what they were doing with Cara Dune. I mean, she became a marshal and then was going to transition in that show. I mean, why not? Why not?
It's a good point.
I'm not managing my expectations, guys.
Are they ever going to do anything with her character, though, out of curiosity? You think they're just going to leave it forever? Like, you don't think they'll like imply that she's dead some way? I mean,
no, I don't think they want to deal with the fact that they killed her off screen because they don't want the backlash. It's just going to not be talked about. It's like that relative that just stopped showing up to Christmas, and you're like, what happened? I don't know. You're busy.
How about the stuffing?
Man.
All right.
Yeah,
oh my God, so much good stuff coming our way, y'all. Of course, though, if you liked Bounty Hunt, we hope you're also enjoying the rest of the stuff we have here on the ETN Network. Every Monday, we do the Living Force podcast with all of us. Tomorrow, we're finishing up our roundtable on the Fallen Star. Part 1 I thought it was a really great conversation. We got super emotional, of course. And then part 2 is tomorrow night. And then every Wednesday evening, we have the Cosmic Force, which is our comics show. And every Thursday, we got Legends Look Backs that tells you all about all the books, Legends, of which there are many. All those crews are awesome. And of course, if you're part of our Patreon community, you get access to the Star Wars Archives. You get access to the Ghost Crew and a bunch of other behind-the-scenes content. And if you've made it thus far, we just want to say thank you earnestly for coming on this journey with us. As Charles said, we would not be getting together every weekend like this to talk about these shows without this show and without all of you that wanted to watch it. So thank you. We hope you enjoyed the Book of Boba Fett. We hope you'll enjoy the next show. We will be here. But my friends, that'll do it for this week's episode of Bounty Hunt. Keep your eyes out for our next hunt, and we'll be diving into Obi-Wan Kenobi Episode 1? Maybe. Gotta start saying that out loud. A special note, we here at UTD are in need of another video editor. So, if you are a talented person that has a little bit of experience editing videos, we're looking to turn some of our existing content into short-form content. So if you want to join the team of passionate Star Wars fans and volunteers, and you want to contribute to our mission here at Utini, please shoot a brief note over to Corey@utini.com. A special thank you goes out to OK Endar, Jeremy Kazina, Brian Dooley, JG Kars, Earl Q, Patrick Ortiz, and Carl Sander on our Jedi High Council, and Matt Billington, Tyler Latour, Elizabeth Cloutier, Jason Mitchell, Freddie C., and Sally and Chris Eilerson on our Alliance High Command. Go ahead, tell us what you thought about this season of the Book of Boba Fett in our Discord community at utini.com/discord, and follow the main show on Twitter at LivingForcePod, and all of us individually for our thoughts of all things Star Wars. I'm at Eric Eilerson, Corey is at Doc Star Wars MD, Charles is at C. Hankel, and Wes is at Boss Wes. Until next time, or the last time, like a bantha.